So you've decided that you want to play Survivor. But how do you go about it? It's no fun to constantly die. I mean, hell, you're supposed to stay alive, clues in the name. Well, I'm gonna be walking you through all you need to know to play a Survivor in Dead by Daylight. In this video, I'll only be covering the basics of playing Survivor. I'm gonna be working on another video in which I'll go more in depth on multiple ways to improve at playing Survivor as a whole. But in this video, I'm mainly gonna be explaining how it even works in the first place. So with that all being said, let's get right into it. At the start of every match, otherwise known as trials, you'll spawn in a map either alone or with others. It's important that you get a lay of the land when you do, so look around for landmarks so you can recognize where you have and haven't been. This way you'll be aware of your whereabouts and where you can and cannot go. Let's go over your main objective first, repairing generators. Throughout the map there will be 7 broken generators, of which 5 need to be repaired in order to restore the power. You can recognize where generators are by the lights that are attached to them, which reach up into the sky. Looking up is a good way to see one of these light posts and find a generator. There's also a secondary objective, which is to cleanse totems which are scattered around the map and are a little more hidden. Do keep in mind that doing this is entirely optional, but doing so sabotages the killer and cleansing one gives you 1000 blood points. So what exactly can you do as a survivor? First off, I'll go over movement. Every survivor is able to crouch walk, and sprint. You'll often see new players crouch walk everywhere they go because it makes them feel safe and hidden, and while this might be true, you're slowing yourself down to the speed of a snail, and traveling around the map this way is very inefficient and you want to avoid doing so. So what about walking then? Well, while it's not as fast as sprinting, you're at least not going at the slowest speed you can. But don't be fooled, because in some cases, walking is the best choice. More on that later. Sprinting, on the other hand, is something that you should always be doing. However, something really important to keep in mind is that when you sprint, you leave a trail called scratch marks. The survivors themselves can't see the scratch marks that they leave behind, while the killer can't see them until they fade away over time. Sprinting is the quickest way to get around the map and shaves off so much travel time. Time is one of the most important things in this game, but I'll talk more about that later and I'll go more in depth on that in other videos. The question is, when do you know to crouch, walk, or sprint? Generally, you should only crouch if you're in a scenario where you absolutely have to stay hidden from the killer. If, for example, you are the last survivor alive and are fairly close to one of the exits but the killer's in the area, you don't want to blindly make a run for it only to then get spotted and die before you even reach it. Look around with your camera, see if the killer is leaving or not paying attention. Then when you feel it is the right moment, stop crouching, make a sprint for the gate, and escape. Walking is a good way to try and cut a corner without being seen, while also leaving no scratch marks behind. It's also very common to walk away from a generator when you know the killer is coming. This way they can't immediately follow your trail. If the killer then does find you, you of course will have to start sprinting. In almost any other scenario though, as long as you're not in a situation where you absolutely have to hide from the killer, you want to be sprinting constantly since it's the fastest way to get around. There is one problem though. Even when sprinting, every killer in the game is faster than all of the survivors. With the exception of the nurse, but she can teleport through almost any obstacle, which is such bullshit. This means that if you were to sprint in a straight line without being interrupted, the killer will always be able to catch up to you. This is when the 2 means of staying alive come into play: vaulting and pallet dropping. Around the map you will find structures which can contain vault locations and or pallets. Both of these slow down the killer and allow you to put some distance in between you and them. In a chase, you can vault the same window 3 times before it gets blocked off, meaning you can no longer interact with it. Use this knowledge to your advantage and make sure that your 3rd vault isn't into the killer or a dead zone, because you will not be able to vault back. There's also pallets which you can pull down. If a killer is close enough when you pull it down, you can even stun them with the pallet itself, giving you even more time and distance. You're also able to vault drop pallets. You can vault over a drop pallet infinitely instead of only 3 times like with windows. Do keep in mind that killers are able to break drop pallets and render them completely unusable. Now here's a very important note. There are multiple vaulting speeds. There are slow vaults, medium vaults, and fast vaults. Medium vaults only apply to windows and not to pallets. A slow vault is when you interact with a vault location without holding the sprint button. There's also a medium vault, which you perform by holding the sprint button and interact with a window. The thing is, you only get medium vaults when there's not enough distance between you and the vault before you interact with it, or if you run to the window at a weird angle. Medium vaults are often very risky, and you should always aim to go for fast vaults. The way you perform a fast vault is if you run towards a window in a clean angle and there's enough distance between you and the window when you press the vault button. If you want to fast vault a pallet, you simply have to hold the sprint button and then vault the pallet. The reason why I think this is so important to know is because I see new players medium vault windows during a chase and then die because of it. A killer is almost guaranteed a free hit when you medium vault in front of them, so getting the hang of fast vaults as soon as possible is mandatory to actually get any use out of windows. Now at first it's going to be very difficult to recognize structures that will actually have these resources. This is why it's very important that you remember where you found a vault location or a pallet, so the next time you recognize this structure, you'll know what you can find there. Even then, every map you play on has RNG that will determine which structures spawn and which resources are available inside them. Some structures are always the same and contain the same resources, and with time, you'll know which ones these are. These structures will always guarantee you the same resources every single time you come across them. A good example is the harvester on the Coldwind farm maps. They always come with windows on either side. Another important thing is that when you are in a chase, you don't want to throw down every single pallet you see. When you're in a structure that comes with both a window and a pallet, make sure to try and use the window multiple times before dropping the pallet, since you can only drop a pallet once and vault a window 3 times. The most optimal way to go about having a chase in one of these structures is to vault the window as many times as you're comfortable with, preferably 3 times of course, before dropping the pallet. But don't let this discourage you from using pallets at all. You don't have to use the window before using the pallet. In fact, if you think you won't be able to make it to the window in time, then dropping a pallet instead is way more preferable since you're keeping yourself alive and making the chase go on for longer. You want chases to last as long as possible because when you're in a chase, you're wasting the killer's time. During this time, your teammates are able to repair generators or unhook your teammates. Basically, keeping the killer occupied is the best way to win a game. So now that I've talked about chases, I think it's a good moment to talk about the status HUD and health states. In the bottom left of your screen, you can see the amount of generators that still have to be repaired and the status of all 4 survivors. If you bought an item, you can also see which item you brought, the quality of the item, and the add-ons for the item. Healthy survivors can perform all interactions and move at their default movement speed. They don't make excessive noises other than heavy breathing after running. Receiving damage from a killer's weapon puts healthy survivors into the injured state. While injured, survivors will bleed and grunt in pain, making them easier to track. Though an injured survivor limps, their movement speed is unaffected and the same as one healthy. Receiving damage from a killer's power or weapon puts injured survivors into the dying state. In the dying state, a survivor's movement speed is limited to a slow crawl. A crawling survivor has 2 options: recover as much health as they can, having the bar max out at 95%, or crawl away to find help. Without the aid of certain perks, a survivor can't fully recover by themselves, and will need another survivor to finish healing them. When you're in the dying state, the killer can pick you up and carry you to a sacrificial hook, on which they will hang you to sacrifice you to the entity, which basically boils down to being the god of the game's universe. When you're hooked, there's also multiple stages. In the first hook stage, you're immobilized until a teammate rescues you. Alternatively, you can take a chance to escape the hook on your own. By default, you will have a 4% chance of success. Do keep in mind that with every attempt, you're decreasing how much time you have left on the hook before you bleed out. When you reach the second stage, you also can't take a chance to escape on your own anymore. If you do not struggle, the entity will prematurely kill you before your bleed out timer runs out. There are also exclusive health states and status HUD icons that are determined by the killer's power, such as the trap state when you step in the trapper's bear trap. I won't go over all of them, but as you play more and more, you will start running into these and recognize what they do and to which killer they belong. As a survivor, you're also able to bring or find items in chests that can help increase the odds of your survival. You can bring a medkit, toolbox, flashlight, map, key, and even firecrackers. You can also attach up to 2 add-ons per item, which obviously make your item do certain things better. Now it's time to get into perks. Knowing what the perks are and do is very important for both roles. If you don't pay any mind to them, then half the time when something happens in the game, you'll stop and think to yourself, wait, how did that person just do that? I know that for most people reading is a drag, but reading up on the perks and understanding them will not only make you better as a player, but will also make the game more fun to play. Of course, I don't expect you to read what all 158 perks do, but at the end of every single match, you can hover over the perks that a player was using on the scoreboard. This way, you'll slowly but surely learn what every perk in the game does. On the topic of perks, there are also situational buffs and debuffs. Buffs, of course, being beneficial to you, and debuffs being negative. They're more commonly known as status effects. A really good example of a very common status effect is the exposed status effect. Do not let the name fool you. This does not mean you are directly revealed to the killer, but when you're exposed, it means that if you're healthy, the next hit that would put you into the injured state will now immediately put you into the dying state. An insta-down, so to speak. As a survivor, it's also very important to know what you are up against. Knowing what the killers are and aren't capable of is a really good thing to base your decisions off of. If a killer does not have an insta-down power, you'll always be able to take risks freely when you're in the healthy state, since you can take at least one hit if things go wrong. There are currently 21 playable killers, each with their own unique power. The more you play, the more you understand what you can and cannot do against specific killers. Once you're experienced enough, you'll be able to develop entire plans in your head solely based off of what the killer's power is. By now you'll know that your main goal is to repair 5 generators, but what's also important to know is what to do after you actually manage to do so. When all generators are repaired, the power is restored and you will have to open either 1 or 2 exit gates to actually escape. This is a painstakingly long process. Exit gates take 20 seconds to open, with each of the 3 lights above the switch box lighting up at each quadrant of the progress bar. If a survivor interrupts the gate opening process, the gate's current progress will be saved. Once at least 1 of the 2 exit gates have been opened, the endgame collapse will commence. During the endgame collapse, survivors then have anywhere from 120 to 240 seconds to escape. The timer slows down anytime a survivor is in a dying state or on a hook. The hatch is an alternative escape method for survivors. When there's only 1 survivor left, the hatch will automatically open in a random selected place on the map and will allow the survivor to jump in and escape. Be careful though, because if the killer finds it before you do, they'll be able to close the hatch. When a killer closes the hatch, the endgame collapse will start and all the remaining unrepaired generators are instantly repaired. Meaning that unless you have a very rare or ultra rare key to reopen it, you'll be forced to try your luck at either one of the 2 exit gates. So at the end of every match, you'll be awarded multiple things. The 2 most common ones are blood points and experience points. Experience points are granted for every second that you spend in a match. So the longer a match lasts, the more experience you earn. Every time you go up a player level, you will earn iridescent shards. Score events are in-game events associated with performing and or completing specific actions that reward players with blood points. You earn blood points for almost every action you do during a match. With these blood points, you can unlock new perks and items in your character's blood web. The blood web randomly gives you items to choose from, and buying everything that is available in the blood web will cause it to reset and spawn a different layout of things you can purchase with blood points. Then there's also iridescent shards, which you earn from leveling up. With iridescent shards, you can buy new characters or buy perks from the Shrine of Secrets. The last currency that I'll talk about are Auric Cells. Auric Cells are a player's store currency. They are used to purchase characters and customization items in the in-game store. Auric Cells are only acquired through the in-game store with real-life money. So now you know how to play Survivor, it's time for you to use all the information that I gave you and escape some trials. There is a lot of stuff to take in, so don't expect that you'll remember everything when you eventually do start playing. Most of what I've learned about playing Survivor has come from either playing the game myself or watching others play it. Becoming a good survivor is all about being experienced, and the only way to be experienced is by playing a lot. You'll start out as a beginner like everyone else, but if you want to become a better survivor, all I can tell you is to be patient and play the game often. And whenever you yourself aren't able to, watch someone else who is better than you playing the game. I hope that this video has taught you anything and helped you to understand how playing as a survivor works. If it did, then feel free to leave the video a like so other people that might be interested can see it. And be sure to subscribe if you want to see more of my videos. Give it some time, and who knows? Maybe you'll be the best survivor in the entire world. Or second best.